Thank you, Dr. Raghavan, for agreeing to join us today. Given your seniority and your experience in dealing with matters of national importance, we feel very honored that you've taken time out today to have this discussion with us. Unlike uh, your typical speaking engagements, our audience, given this is mainly for our clients, are mostly Indian and more importantly, the multinational companies that sometimes get caught either in the crossfire between a case being filed against certain individuals or promoters in certain cases in financial crimes, because they are either sitting on board of a company or they're shareholders in a particular Indian company, they get named in the case or get dragged in the case, sometimes as witness, but more often than not, these days they also get named in the FIRs. And it's very for the corporates, who have international presence and have presence in India, purely financial in nature or investments. It can be very disconcerting because the way some of the investigations happen here are very unique to India. They don't face similar challenges in some of the other developed jurisdictions that they are in. And it would be very helpful to have you help us navigate, what a corporates should be doing when they willy-nilly get involved in such cases, especially the individuals that represent them, whether it's the officials of the MNCs in India or the directors sitting on certain companies in India. CBI is particularly can create concerns for them because CBI is the most powerful and independent police agency in the country, and the significant powers that it has, even for financial crimes, and given that we are not used to the processes that CBI follows, we thought it'd be great insight to learn from you from the other side. How does CBI think about these issues, and what we can learn from you as to how to handle these cases. We've typically only spoken to lawyers. We thought it'd be very good to have an inside view from CBI as to how to handle these matters. The other concerning issues that are unique to the Indian scenario are the delays. There are, last count, there were about more than 250 cases that have been pending for more than 20 years, more than 500 cases that have been pending for 15 years. So the cases don't get closed. So once you get embroiled, how do you even get yourself out of it? And then there is that overlap between CBI and ED, then Enforcement Directorate for financial crimes, where I think even the MCA last year, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, had made a pitch that we need a leading agency because of the overlap between the jurisdiction between the two. So with just that background, Dr. Raghavan, if I can just get you to first just give us your musings on, your, now you've been a bureaucrat too, you were the ambassador to Cyprus, but before that, just your experience at CBI, and what you think is important for us to keep in mind as corporates when dealing with investigations with CBI.
Thank you very much, Pratibha, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Payel. I must thank both of you for having thought of me to come and speak on this occasion. I deem it my privilege to be addressing you and those whom you have assembled, especially from the corporate world. I would like to preface with a very pompous statement that CBI is not a monster. It is an investigative agency like any other agency. Only thing it has an aura, it has an history, it has a panoply of powers. That is why people read the CBI. But I'm sure in course of time, if you handle the CBI intelligently and lawfully, I think you can shed all your fears. Now, first of all, I must compliment you for having chosen this particular subject. You couldn't have picked up any more important subject. Because conventional crime is slowly being replaced by crime, especially of the cyber crime variety. That is why people in India, especially those in the government and in the private sector like you, should concentrate more on economic crime than on conventional crime like robbery, murder, and all that. So that's a sea change that has taken place in the past 30, 40 years. So this CBI is itself concentrating. It has got an economic offences wing, special crime wing, and a cyber crime wing. So I'm happy that it chose the subject. And more recently, post-COVID, the crime scenario has changed with the new form of crime of those wanting to exploit the anxiety of those affected by COVID or those who are afraid that they will in course of time be affected by COVID. So many private firms, there's a mushroom growth of private individuals who have been exploiting this anxiety and trying to sell face masks and various medicines which are expected to take care of COVID just in case you are the unfortunate victim. So the Interpol itself has made an assessment that COVID has given a new dimension to crime, despite the fact, surprisingly, despite the fact that a majority of people are confining themselves to homes. So once people confine themselves to homes, you will see a fall in crime, but now you are seeing a different kind of crime, namely frauds on gullible members of the public and peddling the questionable quality of masks and medicines. So this also you should keep in mind as part of the white-collar crime that is now raging over the world. And so Interpol, the International Criminal Police Organization, based in Lyon in France, which oversees trends in crime all over the world, that has advised people all over the globe to beware of these new gangs which have come about trying to exploit the COVID situation. Now, back home in India, as elsewhere, economic crime has assumed that big dimensions. But if somebody makes a loose statement saying that crime is not increased, this is a very favorite statement on the part of a lot of people, including politicians. Crime is going up. When you are in the opposition, you say crime has gone up. When you are in power, you say crime has not gone up. Like Corona. Some people in the establishment say Corona virulence has come down, whereas those in the opposition say, no, it's gone up, government has. So the truth lies somewhere in between. So economic crime, especially that which affects the corporates, is high, but high compared to what? Not in comparison to the population. We have 1.2, 1.3 billion people. So if you compare the population against the crime, I do not think we have seen such a surge in crime. It is under control. The point is, economic crime requires a lot of brains. More and more, see, the level of education has gone up. More number of colleges, more number of schools, more number of members of the public who are watching on TV what cyber crime is about. So naturally, they are also indulging in a lot of crime. And this is a factor we should keep in mind, especially in the corporate world. You're all highly digitized. You use computers for everything. Now, the new phenomenon of WFH, working from home. That is also going to create a new problem. Recently, there was an attack on Twitter, whereby the Twitter accounts, a number of celebrities, were hacked. One reason that is which is trotted out to account for this large-scale attack on Twitter accounts is that you are given facility for your employees to work from home. As a result, they have a free day to do whatever they want, which is only partially right. We don't go by reports saying that cyber security has come down because people have started working from home. And the companies are not so imbecile, so inarticulate. They have taken their precautions, and you in the private sector should take this seriously. What is the impact of allowing your employees to work from home? What are the risks? How you can manage these risks? I'm saying it incidentally. This may not exactly relevant to the subject in the afternoon, but this is what I thought. This was the occasion when I could brainwash you so that you take more caution in handling cyber crime. Now, we have especially the corporates are concerned, money laundering is one aspect of crime which requires tremendous attention. Not many are paying attention to money laundering. Money laundering, we have a very good act which has undergone some changes, and money laundering is favorite with many on the private sector, and even in the kind of corporate sector and private industry, because it is easily committed without being noticed. The fact that you have committed a crime of money laundering comes to notice very many years later, unless you get caught in between. So money laundering is one concern we should be careful about, and so that your clients are clean. There's no point in getting worked up. There's no need for you to get exercised over the authority of the CBI or the ED or the state police as far as your books are clean. As gone are the days when you can easily dress up your books and then make people send investigating agencies up the garden path. So the risks are very much higher than before. Risks of getting caught, risks of dishonesty. If you commit an act of dishonesty, you are more likely to get caught now than a few years ago. This many people don't understand. People frequently read newspaper accounts of an industrialist buying loans, taking loans from a bank for a certain purpose, then diverting it to some other purpose. I do not understand how they do it. You get a loan from a bank for a certain purpose, and you divert it to some other purpose deliberately, not that you don't know about it, then you're complaining that the CBI or the ED is after you. This is where intelligent people, they get caught because of this foolishness of diverting public money to quarters where they were not intended to be applied. So money laundering is one aspect. Then cyber crime, again, employee security. All these are must give you food for thought, and there's no point in crying after getting caught. I know very many times when you see names in the newspapers, there is a feeling that an innocent person has been caught. This is what Pratibha and I discussed before we hit upon this particular subject. It is not all that easy to fix an innocent person, frame an innocent person. I am not ruling out that if there's a personal animosity between an investigating officer and a private individual, it is not difficult to fix, but the cost of fixing or framing are too huge for an individual investigator. For example, the CBI registers a case. It can't register a case out of thin air. It can't register a case on false documents. Just make sure that the documents are genuine. You go to the CBI, you want to settle score with a private individual, and you want to tell the CBI that this man is dishonest, he has fabricated his records, and he has caused loss to a public bank or any individual. Then CBI just doesn't immediately register a case and arrest you. There are procedures in the CBI which are custom approved, and there are several levels in the CBI. And ultimately, when a person is taken to go to the charge sheet, you remember that there are 5 levels of officers in the CBI who would have gone through these papers and then endorsed action to arrest as well as to charge sheet a person. So there are safeguards built within the law which will give you a lot of confidence. But then you must be thorough with your law. That is why companies like you should focus on education, educating your clients on the do's and don'ts and also the nuances of law. Law keeps changing. There are many amendments. Even the PMLA has gone through a number of amendments. And so you must need to educate. I think as a consulting company, you should spend some time and money on training people, training your clients on the law. Because not many people think that it's worth that time and money to study law. So everyone, you need not have gone through a legal course like what Pratibha or Raj did. It's not a rigorous course, but I think every one of us, even as a private citizen, not merely as a private entrepreneur, we should all know the law. A lot of people commit a crime without knowing that they're overstepping the law. It's not very difficult. Now we have an overload of information. And when that's the case, what is your problem in learning nuances of law so that you are on the right side of law? So I think this is the kind of introduction I would like to give. I'm open to any question. You like to clarify, elucidate on whatever you want to. Now the subject is thrown up for discussion.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, that I knew because of our previous discussions on this topic, we had carefully termed it as financial crimes protecting the innocent. So we work with the presumption there are certain innocent people who also get caught, like I said, in the crossfire sometimes. And very often, we would like to, of course, believe that, we as lawyers have to believe that our clients are anyways innocent till proven guilty. But what happens is, for example, this happened in Satyam, and it's happened in many of the other high-profile cases also. And without going into the nitty-gritties of the innocence of the independent directors there, but you have nominee directors who are directors of shareholders who are on the boards just to protect their economic interest of the investment that they have made in the company. Or you're an independent director because the law requires you to have independent directors. So you get professionals like you and me to sit on the board of these companies. In case of such professionals, unfortunately today, from a CRPC perspective, which is what CBI would look at, there is no distinction, even though the Companies Act has distinction to a certain extent in terms of people responsible for certain acts in the company and having more liability for them. But within CRPC, there is no such distinction. So when the notice comes, it comes equally for these independent directors and for these nominee directors, as much for the directors and the officers who are running the company. In such a scenario, we need to, and these are the people who are most scared, because there is not much transparency when you get a notice whether CBI has the power to arrest for investigation. Is that something that can be done when they invite you for that initial notice that you get for investigation, given that they have that power? And how do you protect yourself in such scenarios?
I'd like to clarify that it's not in every case that CBI resorts to arrest. And it doesn't arrest anybody and everybody. See, there are norms fixed for arrests. As far as possible, arrests are the last resort to ferreting out information. But there are individuals in a particular scan, there are individuals who are squarely guilty of having frittered away the money of a public sector bank or a private individual. And there are it is very obvious that a particular person is involved. And so when you are very clear that a person is in charge of day-to-day affairs of the company, and he has the highest stake in the company doing well, then naturally CBI takes him into custody and then interrogates him. It is not that everything is available on paper. Documents do not speak of everything that happened in the company. There are certain activities behind the documents. That is why certain individuals are called. Your point is right. The CBI and other enforcement agencies should make a distinction between those who are in charge of day-to-day affairs and those who aren't. And especially in respect of independent directors, there is a need for an examination to check how much did they know of what's happening in the country. I mean, you can easily say that legally you are responsible. That is fine. But then how much information you are privy to? And if you are privy to some information which shows dishonesty, then what did you do about it? Did you raise it in a meeting, or did you tell the enforcement authorities that is what is happening right under your nose? So you cannot just evade your responsibility just because you are an independent director. It is for the CBI to prove that this independent director had knowledge of something happening. In spite of it, he did not lift a finger to correct either the management or to go to an enforcement agency and say, I can see this act of dishonesty is shaping. The company chairman and managing director are not doing anything. And as independent director, it is my responsibility to bring it to notice. Nothing like writing. If the independent director is innocent and if he smells the rat, there is nothing that prevents him from putting down in writing. This is what I tell many of my friends who get into trouble with the CBI or any enforcement agency. Why do you not put it down in writing? That you knew this was happening and still you didn't go. Of course, the whistleblowers are there, and you're afraid that if you did that, you may be harmed. You can't help it. Then if you accept the position of an independent director, you have to face this danger of your being harassed or being harmed. But then you can't have it both ways. Either you are an independent director and then you will spill the beans whenever you see something happening, or if you don't do that, then you're liable to be hauled up by the investigating agency. Is my explanation okay, Pratibha? You want anything more? Have I answered you at all?
Yeah, yes, that was actually very insightful, but just wanted to understand, are there any particular procedures internally? So as you mentioned, there are 4 or 5 officers that have to sign off on the file. Even though CRPC doesn't distinguish, can we give comfort to, let's say, shareholders or people who are not in the position of actively managing the company, that when they are asked to come in for investigation, that they will their risk of getting an arrest for that investigation is negligible. Is there an internal procedure that can give us comfort, because there is nothing in law today?
Arrest is a very serious matter, serious infringement of the liberties of a citizen. So, arrest cannot be resorted to just like that. There are instructions that arrest should be the last resort if you can't get the information you wanted. So, it's not that if there are 4 people who have signed a file which is malafide, and if the investigating officer can prove that you had knowledge that there was something fishy about that transaction, and if you don't raise any questions when it goes up the hierarchy, then it is for you to prove that you didn't have enough information, and that is why you signed the file. You can't blindly can't blindly approve a transaction without getting to know what's happening. And if you have the slightest doubt, you must express reservations. See, ultimately in law, a contemporaneous record of what's happening, contemporaneous record, if a particular transaction takes place on 1st of July, and on 2nd July, when a file comes to you, you raise a question, then that's a sure protection against guilt. It's a presumption of guilt against you. But you don't do anything, you just sign as a kind of a post office. Then you are liable to be questioned, and then the investigating officer will not really go by your statement. He'll make his own independent inquiries to check as to what you are saying is right. You will have to. I remember when I was CBI Director, 1 or 2 of my friends who got caught, they came and asked me, what should I do? I used to say, put down what you know about it. Just because you want to protect somebody, if you write a false note, you will again be liable. And then, for example, in sanctioning of a loan, a friend of mine asked me, if you put down a note saying, I gave this loan despite reservations because my chairman, my managing director asked me to give a loan, then you are hung by the neck. You are a director or a general manager, you are intelligent, you are highly placed, you are paid very well, and mechanically you obey an illegal direction from your chairman or managing director. That will not come to help. Actually, you will be hung by the neck. So you must write, if you are honest, that you applied your discretion. There was an application of mind on your part before saying yes or no to a loan application. But you don't do anything. You merely go by what the other is difficult. I know. If the atmosphere in many organizations is vicious. It is vitiated by several factors. And that is why honesty is again the best policy. And as long as your slate is clean, you are not privy to any dishonesty or privy to any illegal perquisites, then you will have the moral authority to write saying that I do not approve of the. Ultimately, what is it reduced to? Many banking companies and all that, it's reduced to a decision to give a loan to a person, a client. And if that loan turns bad, all those who are involved in sanctioning loan get into trouble. At that time, if the investigating officer sees noting on the file that an individual protested and his protest was overturned till the loan was turned, which turned bad, then it comes to your rescue. But without protesting, you sign on the dotted line, then you are guilty, and as I said, you'll be hung by the neck.
Understood. Actually, we recently were representing some of the foreign investors in the INX media case, where the former finance minister was also named accused. Yeah. And as you know, the nature of the alleged offense there wouldn't even get because it's bribery. it wouldn't be even a matter that would typically come at the board or the shareholder level. And yet all the shareholders at the time were named. And there was also a threat of all the current board of directors being named, which is a recent trend. But since we were representing the foreign investors, we tend to take protection of the MLAT process in place for taking any evidence from people not who are not Indian citizens and not resident in India. In such a scenario, our interaction with the CBI seemed to be that, in this case, we were cooperating in terms of whatever information as shareholder we had that they would want from us. But we did rely on not having to go for a personal in-person investigation, because the particular individual is not resident in India. Now, is that something you think can work against you when you take take advantage of the international procedure protections that are provided to you through treaties, or and so, because these people will ultimately at some point have to want to travel to India. Does that work for CBI, or is that something that can work against you in a case?
No, the point is, as far as I know, the law doesn't make a distinction between an Indian citizen and a foreigner. As long as the foreigner has committed an act which is an offense under the Indian law, he is liable. And no investigating agency will give you a guarantee that if you come to India, you will not be arrested. That's very difficult, unfair to expect. I know the concerns of many foreign investors that if they cooperated with the investigating agency, there could be an occasion when the investigating agency may arrest him. I don't think anything can be done about it. I don't think any government in place can do anything about it. The law says that you are on par with the any other Indian citizen. That is why I know, unfortunately, sometimes a foreigner can get involved without knowing that he was privy to something which is illegal. So the CBI definitely will have a consideration that he is a foreign national, but then ultimately they'll go by the merit of the evidence that is available to judge whether a person is guilty or not guilty. Here, the good old saying that ignorance of the law is no excuse. So any foreign investor coming here, and he will double check on any transaction which he endorses, whether it is legal. So that's where people like to come into play, and it's for you to make sure that your own investors and foreign investors do not lend their names to a dubious and questionable transaction. Of course, arrests of anybody who has committed a crime in the eyes of the law, that will be a lot of discretion in the hands of the investigating agencies. That is why repeatedly, when I was at the CBI, I used to plead with my officers that we should arrest the person only in their last resort. It is possible, as long as there is no fear of this individual who is under lens. If there's a danger of his leaving the country and making himself scarce, as long as that is not there, then there is no need for arrest. And but at a point of time, you may have to take a person into custody for custodial interrogation. Why custodial interrogation opted for? It's because only during the custodial interrogation that there is this element of pressure on the person who is deposing to speak the truth. If there is no such pressure, he will not speak the truth. 99% will not speak the truth and merely give a statement and walk away back to his comfort, back to the comfort of his home. That is why custodial interrogation is asked for, But you must also concede that courts are not very welcome. Courts do not accord custodial interrogation as a matter of rule. They apply their mind, and judges. See, why do you blame the CBI or any enforcement agencies all the time? What about judges? Are they fair? Are they applying the rules of law, the regulations evenly between an accused and the agency? So it's a team effort. It's a court, it's the investigating officer, and the accused, and the prosecutor. All these, if they're all honest men, then this question of unfairness to a person who has committed a crime does not arise at all. Ultimately, again and again, I'm an old-fashioned person. I will say honesty is the best policy. If you think that it is not possible in the modern age, then woe unto you. You may get caught sometime, or you may not get caught at all. You may still go to the grave unarmed and without being dishonored. So that's your luck.
No, absolutely. I take your point on the honesty, but we as lawyers do balance between cooperating because you're innocent, while still maintaining the protection provided to you under law and maintaining the defenses that are provided to you under law. As far as possible, there are checks and balances provided for the purposes because we are a rule of law society. So we've seen that approach actually work really well in the CBI cases that we've dealt with. We've actually, unlike the perception, we've had a very good interaction with the investigation officers in the cases that we've done, where we've managed to, like I said, cooperate to the extent we think is right, and sharing information to the extent that we can as a financial institution, because there are restrictions in terms of how much information a global organization can even share, because there are major confidentiality provisions globally that are applicable to them. But we've seen ultimately the officers, more so, I will honestly say, in CBI versus the ED, where they know where they need information and to what extent they need to push the financial investors in an investigation. And I'm actually very thankful for that. And in any day, I would prefer a matter going to CBI versus the enforcement director, just for that reason. So your point well taken. But just shifting slightly, there's also this interplay between the state police officials and CBI. Even though it's under concurrent list, the CBI, but I think you still need state approval. So do you see, are there any nuances in terms of if it is a matter in a particular state, how it's dealt with across different states in India? And I think we also have a question from the audience on increasingly the states are saying no to CBI investigations.
I'm happy you raised this very valid point. This is true of the US also. The FBI and the state city police or state police. In the UK also we see it to some extent, but the situation in the US is better reported because the FBI is always in the news. Here there is generally a cordial relationship between the CBI and the state police. They need each other to achieve their goals. But lately, before proceeding further, I would like my audience to know that the CBI can function in a state environment only with the permission of the state government. Not many would know about it. You will be surprised that the CBI is at the mercy of the state government. All because CBI is a police organization and not an organization on par with income tax, customs, and ED, which are central agencies, and they are not police agencies. the definition of police is the test whether an organization is, comes with the definition of police is under the CRPC, because all the state police officers derive their power from the Criminal Procedure Code, which lays down rules for registration of a case, then investigation, arrest, and charge sheet. So the CRPC is the main fundamental document which defines a police officer and his functions. Unfortunately, at the time when the Constitution was drawn up, under the CBI Act, that when the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act, drafted in 1947, the SPE, the CBI's previous name is SPE, Special Police Establishment. So it is an organization which is a police organization. When you describe some central agencies as a police organization, you are submissive of the state government, because under the distribution of subjects and the Constitution of India, policing is a state subject. This is why many state governments are giving a short shrift to the CBI. The latest is Rajasthan, which has clearly said, no, we will not, you can't investigate any case in Rajasthan without our consent. Previously, they used to draw a distinction between a state government servant and a central government servant. Now, that distinction is slowly getting obliterated. Many state governments are taking the stand, irrespective of who commits the crime, especially under the Prevention of Corruption Act, unless we give you permission, consent as they call it, you just cannot investigate a case. A CBI can have a good building, lovely building, all paraphernalia, vehicles, telephone, etc. in the state, but it's all absolutely, it doesn't mean a thing until the state government issues a notification saying you are permitted to investigate all offences or only these offences. It is known as a general consent or a specific consent. So some states, when the local bigwigs feel that the CBI is trying to get him or his favorite, then they withdraw the consent. There are many rulings. There is one, if I remember, I'm subject to correction. There is one ruling that says if you withdraw your consent again, if you give your consent, you can't withdraw the consent. I'm not very clear on the case law on this. So, but there are many state governments have got away with this. They give the consent, then they withdraw it. And if there's a malafide, then it has to go to the apex court for a decision. So, this is a problem. Many of us who have been directors of the CBI have been pleading with the government at different points of time that the CBI should cease to be a police organization. It should be on par with income tax, enforcement directorate, customs, separate acts apart. There should be a CBI act which gives confers powers on the CBI without depending on the state government. So until that comes, there will be this kind of a mockery. State government asking the CBI to go to hell. We will not give you permission. So anybody can violate law locally and get away with it. CBI can just watch and get amused. That's all. I hope I'm clear.
No, absolutely.
We had been pleading for a separate CBI Act. CBI Act on par with the Customs Act or Income Tax Act, where the CBI gets powers of its own and not powers under the CRPC. The moment you are described as a police officer, you have to go with the CRPC, and the state government will write roughshod over you when it chooses to.
Understood. And there are many other reforms, we would love to discuss with you, because as I mentioned in the opening, the overlapping jurisdiction between ED and CBI is very, very confusing. I'm sure it's as confusing for the investigation and agencies themselves, because I've seen, sometimes CBI will have certain facts and certain evidence, and ED has some of the other. and it's not exactly that they're working in tandem always in terms of overlapping cases. It was the same situation in INX media case also. In fact, most of the high-profile cases we see both of them investigating the same matter for different offenses. But I think that would take whole another discussion to discuss the reforms required in these matters. Payal, you want to come in right now?
Thank you, Pratibha. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. I had several questions lined up for you, but I understand we are running short of time. I will just pick up the three main questions which I had. Since we were discussing about the overlapping powers of the state police as well as the CBI, or when it comes to an investigation between a ED as well as CBI, this is everything which is within the realm or jurisdiction of India. But today, when you look at financial crime, it has more of a cross-border impact. It's not just restricted to coordinating or actually assisting the investigation agencies internally within India, but we need to start coordinating with maybe the Interpol as well as the federal agencies in various other jurisdictions. So, sir, in your experience, when you have dealt with these high-profile cases which have a cross-border element, or you're dealing with these foreign agencies, do you see a difference in approach, or is there some kind of hindrance in cooperating with each other? Does it actually fasten the process or lead to more of a delay in actually leading to the conclusion which we would want to?
Yeah, as far as within the country is concerned, I think Pratibha, you refer to enormous delays in investigation. Yeah, that is bound to happen, particularly in controversial cases. Witnesses are not willing to come, and we need some scientific examination of documents or forensic examination of samples collected and all that. So delay is, CBI is notorious for the delay, like any other police organization all over the world. Why only India? Quite a few people say, no, in the UK, if a person commits a murder, he gets sentenced within a year and all that. These are only cases of celebrities, like O.J. Simpson. His sentence was pronounced within a couple of years. What about other 1,000 cases which have still hanging fire? So delay is very common to agencies all over the world. So you can't accuse CBI or the state police alone for this. There are several factors. I am not suggesting that this is a very happy situation. I remember when I was in CBI, I handled a case. I was a CBI Director in 2000. There was a case of 1940s or 1950s. In some cases, the witness was not available or the accused had gone. So there are situations. But it is for the Director, the Chief of the Bureau, to make sure that these old cases are disposed of, even if there are supervening circumstances. No, within the country, there isn't much of a discord between the CBI and the state police, as long as there is nothing sensational about the fact or a high-profile VIP is involved. There can be a clash. This is very natural, and you can't frown upon it. When a top dignitary of a state government is in the dock, and if the party to which he belongs is different than the party which rules in the center, there is bound to be a kind of a discord. Again, public opinion and the press will have to assert themselves to make sure that there is no politics in the investigation. It is difficult. I'm not saying it's all hunky-dory. There are problems. But as far as the international investigation is concerned, there are so many cases, including the famous Bofors, which I handled at some point. I think several directors came and went because I think it overlapped into the tenure of so many directors, including myself. There, documents had to be obtained from Swiss court and the Swedish court, and we had to get banks to persuade banks to give the information we wanted, and then there are some instances of accused going away or being allowed to go away. I don't want to go into detail. Deliberately, some accused they're allowed to go away, and we have to get them extradited. So the question of getting documents, as well as getting a person, apprehending a person who is on the run, these are the causes for heavy delay. There's no point in my saying that these delays will be eliminated in course of time. It's like judicial delay. Every Chief Justice says that when I'm Chief Justice, I would like to see all these cases wiped out. Very good intentions, and some of them are able to achieve at least half their target. But to wipe out all the areas, it's impossible. It's a kind of a difficult task. Same is, international investigations will take time. Now, I don't want to mention names, controversial names, who are just hanging on in the UK, USA. We are not able to get them. It's not because of a lack of effort or lack of sincerity on the part of our government or the CBI. It's the legal process is so convoluted. This is bound to continue for ages. So, now the Interpol, I would like to say Interpol is a good organization, but it is an organization which I call it a toothless tiger. So some people think that Interpol is a great organization, powers to arrest and all that. Nothing of that sort. I would like to disabuse you and others who are listening to me of any wrong notion. Interpol is a great organization. It's a good organization. It's a kind of post office. And it's a kind of a clearinghouse where they are able to get information and then pass it on. If you want a particular person A, and there is a warrant, red letter, a red notice they call, red corner notice, which means that there is a non-bearable offence which is wanted in a country A, then the information is circulated to all the member nations of the support, and if this particular individual is apprehended in a particular country, then it is the duty of that government to tell government A that the person has been apprehended and is held in custody. But there are certain countries which just go by. They don't even apprehend a person. They don't. For example, our neighbor saying there is no such person called so and so, and if a person A takes a different name, different from the name under which he committed a crime, then the host country maybe says, no, he is not available here. You wanted a Javed Hussain, the Javed Hussain is not here. So you can change your name and then become. So the ultimate depends on the political will of the country which has apprehended a particular individual who is wanted in our country. So these are various complexities. I do not think any government can solve this. These will continue to dog us, and many of us who want the rule of law, we are frustrated that real criminals still have it good in other countries.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, since you said that there's a lot of complexity in the legal process and it gets a little convoluted, we have several agencies involved. Before we conclude the session, there's just two things I wanted to ask you is, we recently have a committee which is being set up to deal with the reforms in criminal laws in India. Now, obviously, some of them are very archaic. In some cases, amendments, but we have not seen implementation to those laws. So, I mean, as somebody who has served with the CBI, been with the police force, what would be the 3 or the 5 things you would say which should be taken into consideration while the committee is looking at revamping this criminal justice system in our country?
What's the question? There is some distortion in the audio. Please repeat.
Sir. So, sir, I said recently we are having a committee constituted. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you, but still there's some. Okay. Let me see. Let me try to figure out what you're saying. About reforms.
Right, sir. So if there's a committee, what are the 5 suggestions you would give for revamping the current situation of criminal justice system in our country?
Okay. Yeah, that makes it simpler. First of all, I am not a messiah who has come down on earth and saying that I will reform the system. It's preposterous for anybody to claim that he will reform the criminal justice system. And again, in my view, the term reform has been much abused. It is hackneyed, much abused. What do you mean by reform? I mean, you want 100% conviction of crimes, or you want that there are no custodial deaths, there are no person skulking away abroad. I think these are all ambitious. And then 100% honesty. The objective is laudable, but it can never be achieved. But you can always improve on what's happening. That mere law cannot take care of. It is ultimately the cooperation, the consensus in mind, judiciary, the law enforcement, and the executive. Unless these three have a meeting of minds, not much is going to change. And as long as you diverse politics out of this process, yes, we need reform. All over the world, every country, US, UK, they all keep on tinkering with the criminal justice system so that there are no follies and foibles committed by the police. Very difficult task, but that doesn't mean that we should just throw up our hands in desperation. Yeah, first of all, there should be an assurance of reasonable compliance with the existing laws. We always want laws, we want to tinker with laws, inadequate laws. But first of all, comply with the existing laws, then identify the loopholes. Without this Nirbhaya case occurred, there was a hue and cry about reform in law. There has been some changes have been made. To expect that new laws will take care of your situation totally is absurd. For example, the debate on capital punishment. Many people demand capital punishment, saying once you have capital punishment, you will have no murders. This is absurd, because murder is an offense which is committed on passion, on an impulse. So he is not going to examine whether he will be hung or he can escape. At that moment, he wants to wreak vengeance on a particular individual. Same thing, even offenses against women. This is an unfortunate situation. No more. You can build some deterrence against misconduct, but that deterrence cannot be 100%.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, one last question. I know we have exceeded way ahead of time, but just one last question. Since
I have no problem.
in your career, if you could share one experience which actually, not go to any other kind of hardcore criminal issues, but a financial crime which would be of relevance to any MNCs, their directors, and which is already in the public forum. Something, if you could share your experience of such a case.
Again, your audio is very distorted. Okay. I know generally what financial crime and all that, my experience, but beyond that, I couldn't figure out what exactly. If you speak a little slower in a lower voice, possibly this distortion will not be there. Just try.
Sure, sir. I'll repeat my question. Sir, I said when it comes to various financial crimes which are relevant for our clients, like multinational companies, their directors, if they get embroiled in any such kind of a financial crime, based on your experience of dealing with such kind of financial crimes during your career, if you could share any experience, do's and don'ts, which are maybe already part of the public forum, so that you can openly share such an experience with us.
Financial crime, will it include corruption? I mean, there's so many cases which I handle, including Bofors we handle, and a number of other cases in which government funds were embezzled, the fodder scam in Bihar, all that. These cases which involve public servant corruption require very tedious examination of documents. So it required enormous perseverance. And first of all, you should make sure that no documents are destroyed. That is a favorite pastime of many dishonest individuals. So when they commit a crime, they leave office, they destroy everything that will point out their guilt. So first of all, the moment the government or you decide that a particular irregularity has to be investigated, first thing we'll have to assemble documents. And you can't just go and grab documents. There is a procedure by which you can collect documents. You can protect documents and probably move the court and take custody of the documents. Once the documents are with you, you can buy time. And then financial crime is a complicated matter, and you need experts, people who understand financial crime. Not everybody. This is a complaint against the police when they want to investigate a bank fraud or anything similar to that which involves finances. Then the police is inadequate. They do not know the law. They just do a shoddy job. This is why, but this is changing. Many policemen are being put through courses which give them an idea of the nuances of economic crime. So each state has now an economic offences wing, which is fairly well staffed, intelligent young men and women who have knowledge of the law and knowledge of how finance is handled in government or in the private sector. Getting into these wings, I'm hopeful that here sense that this situation will change and every case need not necessarily have to come to the CBI or the ED.
Okay. So thank you, sir. Those were some very honest statements, especially on reforms. We talk about reforms a lot, but I can understand. I guess as far as till human beings are dishonest, we cannot do away with the systems that we have, and our Indian Jugaad also allows, I think, circumvention of crimes. I was discussing with somebody in the revenue department recently, which is another department that is extremely strict in India. And they were saying the same thing, the kind of loopholes we see people taking advantage of in India, it's unparalleled to most of the other jurisdictions when we deal with the other regulators. So point well taken. But at the same time, it's our job to ensure that, those, like I said, who get caught in the crossfire don't suffer because, of certain people taking advantage of these loopholes. And, your insights into how the CBI functions and thinks is extremely important. And we do keep reaching out to you when we have practical questions, and you're always very helpful. So thank you very much for that. We just have one quick question from the audience on CBI's role in the general cybercrimes prevalent in India today.
Yeah. First thing you must remember that 20 years since I left the CBI. But I take pride in the fact that the last year of my tenure as CBI Director, I set up a cybercrime investigation wing and a cybercrime research wing. My successors, I think some of them showed some interest, and not everyone. And now this has become routine. Those days, in 1999, 2000, cybercrime is a novelty. Not that there are no such crimes earlier, but digitization had picked up in the country from about that time. So at that time, it was given low priority. Now I am almost certain that my successors in the recent past have taken care of this, that almost all evidence is now digital evidence. So you can't apply the same methods which you used in the 1980s and 90s to collect evidence. Now we have got the phenomenon of the cell telephone, mobile phone. I remember when I was just coming into CBI, we had about 2 or 3 cell telephones. When I asked for more, the government said, no, it's expensive, we can't give you more, and laugh at me. So now there's so many cell telephones have come with sophisticated software. So that's one thing. And then all this video conferencing, so many developments, astonishing, mind-boggling developments in the area of digitization. And we have massive IT companies which also transact business and over the entire globe. So the whole contours of cybercrime have changed, and I'm sure the CBI has noted these and then has been trying to educate its officers. There's no publicity of the fact that they are equipped now to combat cybercrime of the kind which is happening. But I'm sure in course of time, you'll get to know what the CBI is doing about cybercrime and how well equipped they are. I think the CBI should be slightly more transparent to tell the rest of the world how exactly they're coping with this phenomenon of splurging cybercrime.
Absolutely. And I think, the amount of, if we can, not just in cybercrime, in all aspects, if we can have more interaction between the investigation agencies and the other constituents of the civil society, I think that would definitely help break some of these myths about, the functionings of CBI, because right now it's very opaque to the general public. With that, sir, thank you very, very much for taking out your valuable time and answering all these questions. And, we hope we can get you back sometime to discuss some of those illustrious cases that you have dealt with in your career. But till then, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for participating.